Good afternoon, and a big welcome particularly to our students joining the School and Community Citizen Science Project for the very first time today, and also, of course, to our teachers joining us as well. Thank you for taking the time today. My name is Nicole, and I'm part of the delivery team at Asia Education Foundation based in Melbourne. And I also working alongside Sophie, who's also in the team here in Melbourne. And I can also see that Junior's been joining here in the background from Australia Awards and PNG, as well as all our educators, which is terrific. So at Asia Education Foundation, we proudly acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation as our traditional custodians of the land where we meet, share, discuss, and work. So we pay our respects to all elders, past and present, and extend our respect to all First Nations people throughout Australia and Papua New Guinea as well. So it'd be fabulous if we could hear from everyone who's joining the Google Meet in the room today, as we usually do. So if I could ask, as we're getting started, if everyone could just write in the chat your full name, where you're joining from at your school, and any of the names of who's joining with you at your school. So either student or teacher, and just identifying who's who. And please feel welcome to use the chat throughout the session as we go along if you have any questions that come up, or you have any comments to be raised as well. There might be some interaction within the group chat today. So for this project, we are very happy to be partnering with Zoos Victoria and Port Moresby Nature Park for this student learning activity. It's going to be a really exciting and engaging opportunity for our students to become citizen scientists, apply real-world STEM skills, and also being able to educate others about bird conservation in your school community. So to get us started today, I'll now hand over to Francesca Lenny, who's the Education Officer at Zoos Victoria.
Thanks, Nicole, and hello, everybody. It's lovely to see so many of you here today. I'll just bring up my presentation. As Nicole said, yeah, that one. Please feel free to use the chat box if you have any questions, if I'm going too quickly, anything like that. I'll be more than happy to answer any questions as we go. I will be flicking between the presentation and the chat box, so I'll get to those students as I see, get to the questions as I see them. So welcome to the School and Community Citizen Science Project. This is a really exciting project for us, and I would like to acknowledge the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, who are the traditional owners of the land that I live and work on and play on. And extend, you know, my thanks to them for caring for the land, the earth, and the sky, and the waterways. And this project is brought to you by the PAST team, Port Moresby Nature Park, and Zoos Victoria. So myself and Garrett, who couldn't join us today, we are the ones that have put together the project for you and have running these online sessions for you. We've got Shirley and Ishimu, who are at Port Moresby Nature Park, who have helped with everything that we've put together. So they've looked over everything that we've done and provided us with some materials as well. We have some bird scientists, Miriam and Kat Selwood. So Miriam, who works at Port Moresby Nature Park, and Kat Selwood, who's here at Zoos Victoria. And they've provided some really great resources for everybody to use throughout the project. And finally, Chris Vella, who's a scientist here at Zoos Victoria, he's done an interview with us today to help answer some questions. Now, the aims of the project. So we've got a few things, a few aims for the project. and they are using STEM and citizen science to help investigate birds in your area, having you share data that you collect with a database which is used by scientists worldwide, and then communicate what you discover with the wider community. And so really looking at developing different science skills. We want you to understand bird biology. So what birds need to survive, how they've adapted to their environments, and also some of the issues that they might be facing, as well as what we can do to help. You'll get an opportunity to learn from some real bird scientists, so Miriam and Kat, and also share what you discover with them. And also practice using some of those science skills, so things like science communication, scientific observation, and sharing what you learn with your local community. Oops. So I've got to play a video, and while you're watching this video, if you're at the teacher introduction, you would have seen it, but while you're watching this video, I want you to think about what experiences have you already had with birds. They can be good, they can be bad, they can be something else. You can put your answer into the chat box, or you can just have a chat with the people that might be in the room with you. Okay. So I might give you a moment, because I know there's quite a few of you that are in the room with somebody else. Maybe have a chat with the person, or have a talk with the person that's near you, and think about what sort of experiences have you had with birds already. And I know these answers will be very varied. If you feel brave, you can put that into your chat box as well. Thank you, Karen. So you've had experience with bird photography, which is wonderful. I think birds are probably one of the hardest animals to photograph because they move so quickly, and yeah, they're so well done to you for being involved with that. I know some people may have not a very good experience with birds. I know here we have things like kookaburras and emus that like to take people's food when you're out for picnics and things like that. There we go, Chichanis, you've just shared that an eagle took your ice cream cone away from you once. But that's quite a memorable experience, isn't it? On the farm, feeding chickens. I've got 4 chooks at home, so I love my chooks and I love having them around. Jerry, you've got your experience with the movement of birds, and they really are amazing. I mean, they're one of the only creatures on earth that can fly, which is an amazing thing for them to do. So thank you for sharing those. I'll keep on going. But why birds? Why is this something that we even want to have a look at? Well, really, it's because they are amazing. Now, they're so variable. They're so varied. If you think about all the different bird species that there are in the world, they can be huge, like emus and cassowaries. They can be teeny tiny, like fairy wrens and sparrows. You can have really simple, boring white colors, or you can have the amazing, dazzling displays of colors like the birds of paradise do. They live on all different environments, so they can live on land, they can live on water. Some of them even can fly for weeks and weeks on end and even sleep while they're flying. They eat plants, they eat insects, they eat fish, they eat meat. And they've got a huge variety of different beak shapes, all used for different things. Some are show-offs, some are shy. Ooh, there we go. Some are show-offs, some are shy, a little bit like, you know, a bit like people. And males and females can look very different with some species. I'm sure you could think of the peacock. The male has that amazing tail, whereas the female doesn't. The main reason, though, why we want to look at birds is because we need to know more about them. And this is where you come in. And this is where we're asking for your help, and we're asking you to put on your citizen science hats. So I guess before I keep going, why do you think we need to find out more about birds? What do you think is the reason why? So again, maybe have a talk with someone that's in the room with you, or you can put it into the chat box as well, and I'll read out some of the answers that do come through. So why do you think it's important that we find out more about birds and what they're doing and where they are and all that sort of thing? So Karen, you've said protecting endangered species, wonderful. And I love your story about the crows as well. Seeing changes in ecology, exactly. Birds are really important in the ecosystem. Thinking about introduced species. Ludi, you've said eagles swooping down to get prey. It's amazing seeing eagles swooping down, isn't it? So we've got a few ideas there about why we might need to find out more about birds. But I've got an interview with Chris Bella, who I introduced him a little bit earlier. He's one of the scientists here at Melbourne Zoo, and he works in the Wildlife Conservation and Science Department here at Zoos Victoria. And he's going to help us to answer this question. So I'll pop that on and let him answer.
So we are really lucky to have a scientist with us, Chris Bella, and he works with WCS, which is the Wildlife Conservation and Science Department here at Zoos Victoria. So thank you for joining us, Chris, and welcome.
Thanks for having me, Fran. Really excited to be here and really excited to share my knowledge with all these students that you've told me so much about. The work that you're doing is really cool, so exciting.
Great. So I guess we want to start off by finding out, what is your favorite bird and why?
Oh, that's a tough one. I feel like it changes pretty regularly, but at the moment, now that you've asked me, I really love orange-bellied parrots. You know a little bit about them, right? They're very cool. We breed them here at Zoos Victoria. They're critically endangered, but they're being bred here and we're like releasing them out into the wild. So it's a really good news story. Plus they're super cute. So orange-bellied parrots today. You ask me again tomorrow, it might be something different.
Might be something different. That's quite great. I think my favorite is always going to be kookaburras and kingfishers.
Oh, why is that? I mean, they're so cool.
Yep. I just think they're amazing, and I love their calls and the way they look and all of that sort of stuff. So
a good choice.
Yeah. Okay, and I guess one of the most important questions, and this is something that is really important for our students to know, is why do we need to find out more about birds?
Yeah, so we know a lot about some birds, but for some birds, it's a big question mark. There's lots of information we need to know about them. And finding out about them is going to help us learn about their struggles against losing habitat, about how we're building in their space and those kind of things. Even things like plastic pollution and those things that introduce that are threatening them. So by learning more about these species and the work that you're going to be doing, we're going to be able to kind of put these pieces together to find out how we can help these species, how they're doing right now, what we can do to make sure they thrive into the future.
Oh, great. Thanks very much.
So that was Chris, and he's answered that question, but Passam National High School, you've answered it as well. So you've said that we need to know their behaviours and their habits so that we can find alternative ways to provide for them in a changing environment. Exactly right. And so that we can help to ensure that they're going to be around in the future. So yeah, it's exactly right. Now, there's sort of 5 stages to this project. And so the first part of it is understanding a little bit more about birds and why they need their help. And so, oops, keep going. The first part of it is just understanding bird biology. So what you'll do in your classes is understand more about their adaptations, understand about migration, and start to really understand what a food web is and why we need to think about these things when we're looking at different species. In other words, you're going to really become experts on birds in your area. Next, you'll be practicing some science skills. So I touched on this a little bit in the introduction. You'll be practicing your skills of scientific observation and also learning and practicing bird identification, which is going to be really important when you move on to the next part of the project. So once you've understood more about the birds and their biology, you've had a bit of a practice with some of those science skills, it's time to actually think about how we can help birds. And you've all touched on it already. It's about understanding their behaviors and their habits. So we need to understand birds first before we can then move on to thinking about how we might be able to help them or help the environment that they're in. So I guess I'm going to throw this question at you again. What do you think are some of the things that we can do to help? And it's a huge question. And something I do like to say to all students is that it's not something that can be done independently. So it's something that we have to do all together. Karen, first in, collecting data to understand their situation. Exactly right. So it's really important that we actually understand, how many might be there, what their movements are like, behaviors, all that sort of thing. Ludi, I love that. So talking about nest building and things like that. So again, I'll give you a minute or so. You can have a chat with the people that are in the room with you, and think about what are some of the things we can do to help. And then again, I'm going to go back to Chris, and we'll have a listen to what Chris says and what his ideas might be. Keeping pets indoors, Karen, that's a wonderful way to help. And it's something that's really simple and easy to do. So if maybe you've got dogs or if you've got cats at home, keeping your cat indoors at nighttime to make sure that, they're not preying on the native birds. That's a really, really nice way of helping and something that's really easy to do. Or making sure your dog's on a lead when you're out walking him or her. And yeah. And all these little things, they do help. Bettina, I love that you've included community awareness. So you've said endangered species community awareness. And I think that's so important because like I said before, it's about working all together and not working individually. So if you can raise awareness within your community about endangered species, then it's a really good step in the right direction, isn't it? Jerry, you've said creating environments like habitats, so planting flowers. Karen, you've said planting native trees. So making sure that we're providing that habitat and creating sanctuaries. Thank you, Passam National High. So creating sanctuaries for birds where they're able to go and, thrive, building habitats and reforestation. Thank you, Mary. So we've got some really great ideas there. I'm going to, again, flick to Chris. I've asked a couple of more questions in a little interview with him. So we'll listen to him and then we'll go back into it. Okay.
Yeah.
How do you think this project, so the project that the students are going to be working on, how do you think this project is going to help birds?
That's a really good question. And I'm really excited about these kind of projects, these citizen science projects, because when you think about it, there's so many birds, there's so much wildlife out there, but there's only so many scientists who can get out there and keep an eye on these birds and track them, right? Like it's a big wide world with so many birds. So getting people like yourselves, getting students who have really good knowledge about birds out there, finding data and feeding it back to real scientists so that they can make decisions is super important. It makes things even easier because we just can't get all the information all by ourselves. We need people like you. And what's extra cool about these citizen science projects which I really like, is that they can lead to real outcomes for these birds, right? We can find out where they're migrating, where they're living. We can make all kinds of decisions based on the things that are fed back to us through apps and through the information that you're giving us. So it's so cool to think that you can be pointing an app or collecting some data, and then all of a sudden further down the line, we can find out, hey, this bird is doing really well, or this bird is having a little bit of trouble, and here's why. And we can make these decisions and change these things, help out these birds, make a real difference. It's so cool.
Yeah, I really love that. You really highlighted how it's really important for us all to work together, right?
Yeah,
Yeah.
we're all part of this, and you can all play a really big part in it. Exactly.
Yeah.
Fran.
Great. And I guess one final question for you, Chris,
Yeah.
is there anything else outside of this project that you think we can do to help?
Oh, absolutely. There's all kinds of things depending on, what your life's like and how much you want to get involved in here. Hey, one thing, this app doesn't just have to be for this project. You can still be using iBird all the time, right? You've got your phone in your pocket, or you can just go out birding. That's a really great thing to do. Going out there, observing the birds in your area, learning about them, even just talking to your friends about the birds that you learn and getting them excited about it too. So you can tell other people, you can learn yourself, you can keep using this app kind of thing. Those are all great ways to use the skills that you've learned in this project to continue on this journey. I suppose, I hear that the people at Port Moresby are doing some work around the traditional headdresses at the moment. They're learning a bit more about those. If you can care for those, keep them in the best condition possible so they can be passed on from generation to generation, I think that's a really great way to continue helping out birds. There's just so many things that you can do, and the list that I've just rattled off now is not the only things. You can get creative and find your own ways to continue helping birds, and I'm sure that Fran and Garen are going to give you further ideas and kind of things that you can keep being involved with.
Thanks so much, Chris, and thanks for your time. I know you're super busy, so we really appreciate you taking the time and answering some of my questions.
I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to you all, because I think everything that you're doing right now is really important. So happy to make the time for students who are doing such important work.
All right, so I guess in the project, you'll be learning about birds, you'll be becoming a bird expert, you'll be developing some of your science skills, so skills of scientific observation and bird identification, and then it's about actually putting those things into practice and becoming citizen scientists. Now, Karen, you've asked the question, are there many endangered birds in PNG in Australia? I wouldn't know the exact number, but there definitely are. The bird mentioned earlier, that Chris mentioned earlier, the orange-bellied parrot is endangered. There's the helmeted honeyeater, which is one that's native to Victoria. And I'm sure that, the list does continue, unfortunately. And I guess with the trend of threats and things like that, there'd be definitely more birds being added to that list. So I guess it's about not really focusing too much on that, but thinking about ways that we can help. And there's been some really, really great ideas that have come up already. So things like building bird sanctuaries and focusing on preserving and conserving, which is wonderful. Okay, so yeah, we've developed some of those skills, and then the next part of it is about collecting data. So it's about putting those science skills that you've learned, the skills of observation and bird identification, into practice. And so you'll be going out collecting data about birds that are in your area, and you might notice some trends. So you might notice that you're seeing a lot of one particular type of bird that maybe shouldn't be there. Or maybe you're noticing that there's a lot of a bird that should be there, which is great. And so those are the sorts of things that, you really need to keep an eye out for. And then this is the citizen science part of it. So Chris mentioned something called eBird. And so eBird is actually a global platform where real scientists use data that you're going to be putting up onto eBird to look at trends in migration, so the movement of birds, to look at numbers of birds around the area. It's basically used by scientists worldwide to track and monitor bird populations and movements. Because again, like what Chris said, there's not enough scientists out there to do it by themselves. And this is where citizen science is really important. So this is where the work that you're going to be doing has that real world application and actually, you know, can make a really big difference. So it's an app that's used by people around the world, like I said, and more than 100 million bird sightings are actually put into this app every year, which is just amazing. So just think about, you know, the difference that you can make. The data is used by scientists in lots of different ways, and, you know, it could even have the effect of helping scientists to make decisions, big decisions, and you know, make new policy and things like that. So, you know, what you're doing can have a real effect on what's going on in the area that you are in. And so once you've had you've learnt all about birds, you've collected your data, you've put that data onto eBird, it's about then sharing that. And someone, I'm sorry, I can't remember who, but someone did mention that. It's about community awareness. And this is where you'll be building on your science communication skills, which is just so important. Making it so that, you know, the community around you, so people maybe that don't have that science background, can understand what's happening. And you're getting a chance to share things that you've discovered and that you found with your local community, which can be really, really empowering. And I'm sure that, you know, friends and family would be super impressed by what you're doing. So I'm curious to see, I guess, what do you think might be the most interesting thing about this project? What are you most excited about? Is it just about learning more about birds? Is it about, you know, discovering what birds are in your area? Is it, you know, working on your science communication skills? Again, have a chat with maybe someone that's around you, and or if you're feeling brave, again, put it into the chat box. But what do you think is going to be the most important thing about this project? Interesting thing, sorry. Personally, I'm really excited to see if there's certain trends that come up. So with things like introduced birds and or numbers of birds that are found in different areas. I think it'll be really interesting to see the sorts of things that you're finding in your local areas, because I don't think people have a very whole understanding of, you know, what's happening with birds, really. So I think you can make some really big impacts in that respect. Yeah, I'll give you another minute. So Saria, you're interested in knowing how birds adapt to their environment. Wonderful. And you know what? Birds have got amazing adaptations. So on the screen, you can see some tawny frogmouths, and they're just absolutely superb with their adaptations. They look, camouflage is a big one for them. And there's obviously lots of other things. And I'm sure that you will learn all about that as you go through the program. Dulce, I'm sorry if I said it incorrectly. So learning about the birds around you will be interesting. And also if there's certain species of bird that migrate and feed around your school area during winter, oh, that would be very interesting. Yeah, because obviously we're in winter now, so birds have probably moved around quite a bit. So it'd be really interesting to see which ones maybe have moved in or out of your area. Yeah, wonderful. Passam, you've mentioned endemic birds. Yeah, that would be very interesting to see what sort of endemic birds might be around you, or introduced species as well, and looking at what their habits are. So one of the activities is actually looking at the behaviors of some of the birds in the area. And so you might see some, behaviors that are specific to the birds that are near you. You never know. You'll discover a new behavior or something. Mary, so just learning more about lifestyles, like courtship behaviors and feeding habits. Yeah, I think the courtship behaviors are really interesting, especially if you're in PNG, and you'll see some of those birds of paradise. Jerry, raise the awareness on preserving endangered bird species. Yeah, and I think that's super important, and hopefully that's something that everybody will get to by the end of the project. Bettina, getting to know everything about birds. I love that. I'm hoping to turn you all into bird scientists by the end of this. So I love that you're wanting to know everything about birds and what you can do to help and support them. And Ludi, you've said discovering more about the habits of the birds and their behaviors and their cultural significance. Yeah, that will be super interesting, because obviously it depends on where you are. Birds will have different significance depending on what areas you're in. Kathy, identifying the different species in your area and getting to know how they've adapted. And Saria, you've said identifying and investigating different types of birds in your area, how they communicate with each other. Maybe you can become a bird whisperer and discover what each chirp means. Amazing. So those are some really wonderful things. I'm super excited to see that. And I do like to tell everybody who is a bird watcher that you're actually a dinosaur watcher as well, because birds are one of the closest animals related to dinosaurs. So you're killing two birds with one stone, I suppose, for lack of a better way of saying it, but you're doing dinosaur watching and bird watching at the same time. All right, so just a few important dates. So we've got the science presentations, which will be due end of July. And so those you can upload to Google Classroom. And then we've also got that celebration week in July as well. So this is where you can share your presentation with other classes or people in your school community. And it's also a chance for you to watch other schools' presentations that have been loaded up onto Google Classroom. So a really nice way to celebrate the project, I think, is to share information and find out what other people have done. So all of that is in your student workbooks and your teachers' teaching guides as well. So thank you for coming. It's amazing to have so many of you here, and thanks so much for responding to me in the chat box. I know it can be difficult sometimes, especially if there's quite a few of you, but we can't wait to see what you find out. And if you do have any questions, or if you have any comments or anything like that, please pop them in to the chat box. And I guess just remember that you're taking part in a really, really important project, and it's going to have a global significance. So just don't forget that as you're going through, and you're doing all of the activities and things like that. Yeah, so Nicole's popped up the links for all the information for the project. And like I said, everything that you need to know is on Google Classroom. So you've got the student workbook, the teaching workbook, and any of your supporting materials and videos and things like that are also up there. But yeah, I'll give you a few moments to see if you've got any questions or anything like that. Thank you, Jerry. Yeah, I'll hang around for a little bit. Otherwise, Nicole, I don't know if you have anything else to add. Hopefully I didn't go too quickly or anything like that.
No, you're all good. Thank you, Fran. Yeah, I might leave it open just for a couple of minutes if anyone had any questions for Fran or the AEF team, and we'll be happy to answer that now. If not, we can do it after the session via WhatsApp or email or phone call.
Yep. Yeah, and if you have any questions, putting them on Google Classroom as well, we'll try and get to those too.
Yeah, perfect. So you're welcome to unmute yourself and ask a question or make a comment, or write that in the chat.
Yes. Hello, good afternoon.
Hello.
One of my teachers here have a question. Can you hear me?
Yes.
Hello. Okay.
Yeah, we can hear you, Mary.
Okay, Ronald has a question to ask. Yes, so that's why I put my answer.
All right, I have a question. We're looking at birds. When we're looking at birds, birds are very important species of animal. So my question is, why is bird so important to us as human beings? Why is
It's a great question. And
to us, how do birds help human?
sorry. So your question is why birds are so important to humans? Is that right?
Yes.
Yes.
Yes. That's a great question. And I think it has a very complex answer. I mean, lots of birds will have cultural significance, definitely. And I'm sure, you can give me some examples of ones that would. And they might be, for all sorts of different reasons. But birds, and this will be something that you look at further in the project, birds are essential for the ecosystem. So if you look at food webs and food chains, if birds were to go missing, you would see big, big changes within the ecosystem that can upset what's going on. So that would then have knock-on effects. Many birds eat insects, and these insects, eat a lot of the crops and plants that we might be relying on. And so if the birds were to go, then the insects would increase, and we would see, the insects eating all of the plants that we rely on to eat. But you will investigate this further in the project, and so hopefully you can come up with some of your own answers to that. But yeah, I don't think we have enough time for me to go into all of the details for that question, but that's a really, really good question. Thank you.
Thank you.
Hopefully I answered. Thank you. Laura, you've said, how can we identify the names of the birds? So again, in your teaching guide, there's a few different ways you can do it. So you can use eBird to help you. So you can look at birds that are in your area, and you can use that to help you identify birds. You can ask people in your local community, or you can put pictures up onto Google Classroom and we can help you to identify them. And I think there's a couple of other ways. There's a few apps and things you can use if you have access to them as well. Ludi, you don't really need specific bird watching equipment. I mean, it's useful to have binoculars, but it's not essential. I guess it's more about going out and watching the birds, just using your own observation skills and trying to get as close as possible. But I wouldn't say you have to go out and buy lots of equipment to do that. Yeah. There's a few people with their hand up. So Jerry, do you want to start first? If you want to unmute and you can ask.
Good afternoon to you all. Actually, not me, but my participants here, colleague and a student would like to share a question with us.
Yep, sure.
It's my grade 9 students.
Hello.
Hello. Actually, my question is, there are many endangered species, but why is it so important for us to discuss more on birds?
More than the endangered species? Well, I mean, if you want to focus on the endangered species, then you can go right ahead. If that's what you want to focus your project on, then sure. And if you already know of species of bird in your area that are endangered, maybe you can just focus your project on trying to find out their numbers in your area. But that's completely up to you and your teachers and what you decide the direction of your project that you want to take it in. we're not saying that you have to count every single bird in your area. So if you choose to just do the endangered species, of course you can do that. There's no problem with that at all. Does that help?
Thank you.
Yeah, that's okay.
And
is there another one? Yeah.
Just a remark from yeah. Okay, I think we're done with that, Team Aditale now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Kathy, if you want to unmute and you can ask.
Yes, actually, it's one of the students who has a question here.
Mm-hmm.
Olivia, you can.
Thank you. Our question is that there are many species, but are you going to investigate only one or two?
It's up to you. It's your choice. So you can choose to maybe pick one or two, or if you want, you can do all of them. It's totally up to you. It's an open project, so the decision is up to you and your teacher and what you think you want to do. Yeah. We don't give a specific number of birds that you need to look at.
Thank you.
Yeah, that's okay. Who else have I got here? Grace.
Hello.
Hi.
Hi. My question has been answered by one of the participants there, just to find out the number of birds that we will be observing. So it's already been answered. Thank you.
Okay, that's okay. Daisy.
This is Ruben Tomape with his question.
Okay.
Sorry, my question is, we'll be collecting especially data for pets, but from experience, when I was doing study at the University of Boroka, I went for field trip at the Mount Michael in Goroka, and then we used some equipment.
Mm-hmm.
We used some equipment and we collected especially the data for beds, and some of the equipment that we used were like transect, especially transect net and binocular and some other equipment that helped us to collect the data for especially beds. But if you are saying, if you are telling us to collect the data, then by just watching beds, but beds are flying animals, and it's hard for us to, collect the data right away. So I think we need the equipment for collecting data.
So if you look in the teaching guide, we have some recommendations in there on how you can do the bird watching with minimal equipment. And so it's similar to using a transect, but we use what we call a quadrat. But yeah, if you just have a look in the teaching guide, it can give you some ideas on what to do. But you're more than welcome to use the equipment if it's available to you. Does that help?
Yes, thank you.
That's okay. Alora.
Yeah, good afternoon. One of my students would like to ask something.
Yep.
Good afternoon. I have a question. My question is, how are we going to do this project? Are there some guides and procedures that we are going to follow or use in collecting data, like features, characteristics, and similarities? Thank you.
Yeah, so it's all of that information is in the student workbook and the teaching guide. So if you go onto Google Classroom, you can get all of the resources that can help you with that. So with the birds, it's about looking at their characteristics and identifying which one is which, and then it's about counting the ones that you decide you want to look at. But yeah, if you go onto Google Classroom and you download the student workbook, it's all of the information that you need is inside there.
So the birds when we're sightseeing.
You can definitely, yes. It probably will help to identify them if you can't do it right then. And if you upload those pictures to Google Classroom, we can then help you identify as well. So of course you can take photos. Definitely. All right. Yep. I'll move to Bettina if you've answered, yeah. Bettina, yeah.
Good afternoon, everyone. I have my students here. They have a question. Esther is going to speak on behalf of them.
Thank you. My question is, as part of our scientific research, can we create a questionnaire to guide us in asking the local people around us about their observations and opinions about certain birds that have either decreased in population or are rarely spotted compared to the past?
Yeah, definitely. I think that would be really interesting to see what the local community thinks, and they have probably got some very good insights into birds and some of the trends that they've noticed. So yeah, definitely would be a great way of adding to your research. So yeah, of course.
Thank you.
No problem. Jerry, you have another question?
So I have a colleague here to ask you a question again. I thought it's finished, but one more left. Yeah.
That's okay.
Thank you. Good afternoon. I have a question here. Do we have to restrict our investigation to where we are, to a specific location, or do we have to go out also to do our investigation?
Again, totally up to you. So you can choose to go out to a different location if you want to. Maybe you know somewhere where they, you've noticed a trend in bird population that you're interested in looking more into. So you can go somewhere else if you want. If you look at the bird data collection sheet, you need to write down the location. So as long as you're writing down that information and you know where it is, then yeah, of course, you can go wherever you like.
Thank you very much.
Thank you.
No problem.
Yep.
All right. Is there any more questions? I guess just to finish off, we have designed the project so it's very open. So a lot of the questions you're asking, you can do all of those things. So you can go to different locations. You can focus just on one bird if you want to, or you can do a whole range of bird species. It's completely up to you what you do with the project. The only real things that we have in the teaching guide and the student workbook is just guides on how you can do certain activities like the bird observation and things like that. So yeah, it's a very, very open project, and I guess the parameters and the things that you're actually looking at is totally up to you and your students and your teachers. But Bettina, you have another question?
Yes, my student here wants to ask.
Yep.
After our scientific report, can we reach out to other schools, and within our schools as well? Can we reach out to them and do awareness, or is it just within us?
Yeah, so you can go out to other schools if you like. Yeah, definitely. I think the more people that hear about it, the better. So yeah, of course. I mean, if you have any other questions, you can feel free to email. You can put them up onto the WhatsApp, like Nicole said. You can put them on Google Classroom, and then we can get to those questions, as soon as we can and answer them for you. But yeah, if you look through the teaching guide and the student workbook, hopefully you've got enough information there to help you with what you need.
All right, amazing. Thank you, Fran,
right.
for teaching us why birds are so important and inspiring us to get started on this project. Clearly, from all the questions, I think we have quite a few people on board, which is really fabulous.
Great.
So thank you for today, and thank you for all our students for your enthusiasm, particularly in the chat, and asking all those questions as well, and for all our teachers for making the arrangements to get everyone on the Google Meet today. So as Fran mentioned just before, our next session will be on next Tuesday on the 21st of June, which will be at the same time. So you can check in, ask any questions, see how your bird watching and data science is tracking along. And there will also be some opportunity to watch new footage from Zoos Victoria and Port Moresby Nature Park as well in that session. So until then, just join the Google Classroom for all any further information and an opportunity to ask questions, and also take a look at the PAS website for all the teaching guides and workbooks and supporting videos and whatnot. So thank you again everyone for joining today, and we'll talk to you all very soon. Have a good afternoon.
Thank you.